Hello, ULF. This is Volgin, and today I'm accompanied by
Comrade Maine.
And today we will be continuing our socialism series with what is Soviet/socialist democracy. And so, basically, there are, as gone into detail before with our new democracy video, there's multiple versions of democracy that exist in the world, and the one that exists throughout most of the world is, of course, bourgeois democracy, since capitalism still dominates the world. However, beginning in the 1920s, a new form of democracy emerged, starting in the Soviet Union, they called it Soviet democracy, but it has evolved to socialist democracy as it is expanded to multiple countries such as Cuba, DPRK, Vietnam, etc. And basically, from how the Soviets did it, is that they was different in the sense that they based it, for one thing, they based it off of what Lenin's writings in State and Revolution. They threw out the old parliamentary procedures and they established more of a people-oriented democracy from the ground up, where these local Soviets, as they start off as, because that's where the Soviet Union gets their name from, the local Soviets, would elect their representatives in their localities, and then from the ground up would go up to the Supreme Soviet, or a National Assembly or whatever. And it would be much more democratic than the bourgeois parliamentary system, because it was more people-oriented, because the ruling class in these countries was not the bourgeoisie. There was no money in politics. It was ran by the people exclusively. Well, even more exclusively than that, not just the people, the proletariat. Another term for this, of course, dictatorship of the proletariat.
I think another, to use an example of Soviet or socialist democracy in action, is Cuba. Cuba has a really easy to understand and really forward version of it that they implement. And essentially in Cuba, to start it at its most basic building blocks, is that at the local level, they will have elections for essentially what are local assemblies. Now if you're running to be a candidate in it, there's either two ways to go. You could run as a part of the 50% that go in as being picked by the populace, or there's the other 50% that are picked through assemblies of organizations such as youth groups, student groups, women's groups, so forth and so forth. Now, to use the example of the going through the populace specifically, essentially what happened is that they go through a caucus system where over the period of months you'll have, say, 5, 6, 7, maybe 10, whatever number of candidates. And through that period of a few months, they will go down the list and eliminate candidates one by one. And will essentially come out near the end of the process with maybe 2 or 3 candidates. They'll then decide out of those 2 or 3 candidates which one they want to send to what is essentially a general election. That person then goes to a vote of the populace as a whole, and they run uncontested. That's where you get the whole, there's only one candidate on the ballot thing. And essentially the reason for that is they've already gone through numerous votes before being sent to the populace as a whole. Now, these caucuses are open generally to the populace. It's a matter of just who wants to be involved and engaged with them. But by the end of the process, a candidate has been voted on numerous times, and at that point, it is not necessary for there to be an oppositional candidate. Another form, or Cuba is an example of their Soviet or socialist democracy, is how engaged they have the populace in the creation of the Constitution. In 1976 and in 2019, there were both new constitutions created and voted upon by the populace. In both of these cases, there was a countrywide effort by the whole populace in the creation of the Constitution. I believe in the case of the 2019 Constitution, there was over 70,000 amendments submitted by the people and voted upon through committees until a final Constitution was created, and then it was put up to a vote by the population, where I believe 98% of the population participated. in the vote for the new Constitution and ended up passing the Constitution. So I feel like that's a good example of Soviet or socialist democracy in action. That being said, this has been Comrade Maine.
This has been Volgin.
Thanks for listening.